Who wants to hear a story?
Hello everyone! Today I am here at the Smurf BBS. This forum has probably been around long enough to use the term BBS. So today I thought that I would read an amazing story for you all. It's a story of courage, it's a story of love, it's a story of a lot of things. It's a very heartwarming and amazing story. Today I'm going to read you that story. It's the story of Smurf in Hand and the Blue Moon Nursery. So basically what this is there's a Smurfs fan community, which I didn't know existed, but apparently it does. And this Smurfs fan community, some of them make fan fiction. And this person made some Smurfs fan fiction about themselves volunteering at like kind of a humane shelter for Smurfs. It gets wild, y'all. It gets pretty freaking wild. Nothing terrible will happen in this story. I promise. Hello all. I recently felt inspired to create more Smurf pictures. I've been rather fascinated by the idea of somehow meeting a Smurf, particularly a baby Smurf. So I made a story about what I'd probably do. I came home to a single package waiting on my doorstep, a small wooden box with ventilation holes in one side and a live specimen label. The box had been addressed to a research lab down the road, but had no return address. Normally, I would have left the box to be redelivered to the proper place, but I heard a faint noise emanating from it. It sounded like crying! Imagine my surprise when I opened the small crate. Inside the crumpled confines on a coarse bed of wood shavings lay a baby Smurf. The poor creature looked up at me, trembling with fear and bewilderment, a single tiny tear rolling down his cheek, and you can see the GIF. I could also click for a bigger Smurf picture. Amazing. I wanted to reassure the dear tiny blue infant that I wasn't going to hurt him. I had never seen a Smurf before, and I tried to recall anything I had read about them, particularly about baby Smurfs on the bluebuddies.com website, which by the way is the website that we are on right now. It's mostly like toys and stuff that people, like old Smurf toys that people resell, but there's also a forum, and apparently it's like fairly active for such a weird tiny fandom. I looked down at him and touched his tail. What a soft, squishy little tail it was. I couldn't resist poking it. The Smurf baby initially flinched, but then a shy smile crept across his little blue face. You can see it in this amazing GIF. He was enjoying my affection. Gazing at his adorable tiny face, I decided to give the blue baby Smurf's bulbous little nose a playful tweak. The baby Smurf giggled and began to wiggle his tail with glee. I continued to play with his little nose, relieved that I had been able to bring the Lilliputian infant to a sense of ease so quickly. I realized that I'd love to contact the Blue Moon Nursery later on to obtain special food and care, but I truly would like to keep him. According to the postmark, the little Smurf had been shut up in that dark box for a day and a half. The poor creature was exhausted, thirsty, and hungry. I let him sleep after feeding him. When he awoke, he was initially scared and disoriented, but I soon calmed him. The poor baby Smurf's pajamas were soiled. After some trial and error amid his squirming, I managed to remove them. Filling a small dollhouse tub with warm water, I placed the blue infant inside, and he was soon giggling and splashing about as I gently washed his tiny, delicate body and limbs. So this Smurf is like about the size of like a frog or something? I guess that's about how big they are. The fictional creatures, the Smurfs. I had wanted to wash baby Smurf's hat along with his pajamas, but when I plucked it off his head, he let out a startled yelp. Immediately covering his bald blue little scalp as best as he could with his miniature hands, he began to whimper and sob piteously. He looked pleadingly up at me at the little white Smurf hat that I held in my hand. I promptly placed it back on his head, and he sighed with relief. I found an old but clean sock and nudged the baby Smurf until he backed inside. It fit him nicely as a sleeping bag. I placed a pincushion under his head for a pillow. A pincushion would make a terrible pillow. They're like beanbags that have been way overstuffed, so they're like super hard. That's why it's a pincushion, because all the hard stuff inside will keep the pins in place. It would be a terrible pillow. I placed a pincushion under his head for a pillow, and turning the lights low, let him snuggle down and get some more sleep. That's it for now. The story of my rescued baby Smurf continues. This depiction is probably the closest I'll ever get to actually holding a baby Smurf. You must live a really sad life if you've never held a baby Smurf. Noted real actual creatures that you can find for real in real life. Baby Smurfs. After I got off the phone with the Blue Moon Nursery, graphic design is my passion. Baby's gone naked. Okay, so this is a comment from Smurf in Hand that I want you all to remember for the future. Recently, I've been listening to an audio rendition of a book called Inkheart. In it, the main character can read characters from pages of text and bring them into our world. That got me thinking how cool it would be if I really had that talent. I could read the latest part of my own story, and this tiny, playful, naked baby Smurf would appear right in my hand. I'd give anything. Winking Smurf emoji. And I just want you guys to remember that later on in this story. I want you to remember that comment. A stern-looking nurse guided me down the hall, explaining that on the weekend she was the only medical staff on duty. We passed by a windowed room where a half-dozen or so baby Smurfs slept and played, attended to by a pleasant-looking lady that obviously loved her tiny charges. An armed security guard stood outside the door. Why do they need an armed security guard at this, basically what is a humane society, but for Smurfs? Further down, we entered the examination room. I tried to reassure the Smurf baby that it was okay as I took him out of my pocket and handed him over to the nurse. With an efficient hand, she immediately stripped off a tiny Smurf's pajamas and his Smurf hat, popping him onto the cold metal exam table. The exposed little blue infant was a pitiful sight, shivering from the touch of the cold metal on his bare skin. He whimpered as he did the day before when I had tried to remove his little hat. I was about to say something to the nurse about it, but she now acted like I wasn't even in the room as she went about the exam. You know, like a doctor. You know how they do their jobs. Even when the parent is there, they still do their jobs. When she produced a tiny glass thermometer, I knew I would... Wait, what? When she produced a tiny glass thermometer, I knew what was coming and simply had to look away, wincing with empathy when I heard the little creature's distressed squeak. They put a thermometer in the Smurf's ass. They put a thermometer in the Smurf's ass in this fanfiction story. This isn't the weird part. This is only the beginning. This is only the beginning. At last the ordeal was over and my baby Smurf was declared to be in fine health. I finished up the paperwork in the reception area as the traumatized little being hid in my coat pocket. Later, back at my home, I consoled the little blue creature, affectionately stroking and squeezing its soft knob of a tail for nearly half an hour. Have you ever pet a cat for half an hour? Like, I don't think anybody has ever pet an animal for that long. I thought that while the weekend nurse may have done her job by the book, I was still stunned that she hadn't made any effort to treat such a precious, sentient being with the dignity that it surely deserved. Y'all know Smurfs aren't real, right? Her doing her job doesn't mean she's not treating it with dignity. This not real creature. This little fairy thing from a children's book. Now baby is truly naked, says Vic George 2010, who also said that other thing about the baby being naked. Yet another naked baby Smurf picture for you, Vic. There's some other characters in this thread. Some real characters. Looking at the wee baby Smurf's soft little body, I felt suddenly compelled to poke its blue tummy. At first, the baby Smurf looked warily as my finger neared his abdomen, but once I began gently poking at it, he squeaked merrily. We played this game for a few minutes, and feeling comfortable with leaving him alone, I commenced to water the lawn. Why do you need to poke the Smurf so bad? Why do you need to touch this baby Smurf so much? I'm a little suspect. By this time, I had also named my adopted baby Smurf. I called him Blueberry. That's just what he looked like. A plump, little, ripe blueberry. Dude's going on about the dignity of this baby Smurf, and then he names it Blueberry because it's like squishy and blue? Like, come on, my dude. At least you got some clothes on the kid now, says Vic George 2010. Hey, Vic? Can you fuck off, Vic? Can you leave? Can you stop? Please? Blueberry's first miracle. Today I met the caretaker from the Blue Moon Nursery while taking a walk in the small town's park. Blueberry was sleeping peacefully in a little sling I'd made to carry him in. A little sling I had made to carry him in. So is this guy just wearing like a full like baby sling, but instead of like a baby that's the size of a human baby, it's like a baby Smurf. So it's just got like this little this like full-on harness thing designed to carry about like 20 pounds of actual human baby. But instead it's like a tiny little pocket and there's a little blue Smurf inside of it. The woman also had a baby Smurf, a female with her that she carried in a miniature wicker basket. Her name was Dewdrop. Dewdrop was rescued in a raid on a warehouse used by exotic pet smugglers. Let me go over that again. Dewdrop was rescued in a raid on a warehouse used by exotic pet smugglers. She had been found in a pile of filthy paint-soaked rags. She had bruises all over her tiny body, limbs, and even her tail, as if someone had been deliberately pinching her delicate blue skin. During her captivity, in lieu of Smurf berries, someone attempted to feed the poor little creature a salty cashew, nearly choking her. It took 3 weeks before Dewdrop wouldn't scream in terror at the sight of a human face upon waking up from a nap. Though she was now trusting to her adoptive human mother, lonely Dewdrop never played or otherwise interacted with the other wee little Smurf babies at the nursery. Apparently there were bruises on the inside that had never healed. As the lady finished her story, Blueberry woke up and started squeaking and waving his tiny outstretched arms in the other baby's direction. The lady decided once again to try to socialize her wary little Smurf and let me carefully place Blueberry into the basket beside her. Both baby Smurfs eyed each other, and then we saw something that defied explanation. From under the blanket we could see a pulsating heart-shaped glow emanating over Blueberry's chest. Within seconds, a similar glow appeared over where Dewdrop's heart would be. At first, they pulsed at different times, but they eventually synchronized and beat as one. Dewdrop smiled and squealed with joy, kicking her tiny feet under the blanket with excitement. Blueberry was similarly elated, and both baby Smurfs wriggled with glee in the cozy basket, grinning and laughing together. When the glowing hearts finally faded, we picked up our respective Smurfs, trying to discern the source of this miracle, but gave it up. Blueberry and Dewdrop were both set down and allowed to frolic in the grass. They squealed and giggled, crawling after each other and playfully grabbing and squeezing each other's plump little blue tail. And then a hawk flew by and picked them up and carried them off to be eaten in its nest, shredded apart by a horrible raptor beak and fed to its babies. Oh good, we get a story about the raid on the exotic pet warehouse that Dewdrop came from. The raid, the day that Dewdrop the baby Smurf had been rescued, is recounted in the journal of one of the customs agents who broke into the smuggler's warehouse. Upon gaining access to the warehouse, it became readily apparent that the smugglers were forewarned and had likely abandoned this base of operations in the middle of the night. There were various partially empty bags of animal feed piled in one corner, as well as a couple of empty cages. A metal desk drawer opened to reveal an empty ampule of animal tranquilizer. We were going to tape the area off for later inspection when a faint noise drew my attention. Inside a wastebasket lying on top of a pile of dirty rags was what appeared to be a tiny blue humanoid creature's head. I thought back to a recent training seminar and wondered if what I was looking at was the seldom seen Smurf. Remembering that these sentient Lilliputians could speak, I was about to address it, but I realized at a second glance that this was an infant of the species, a baby Smurf. What my daughter wouldn't give to be here right now. She actually made me take photos of baby Smurfs from last year's National Geographic and blow them up to poster size for her room. She even had the official life size, which isn't very big at all, baby Smurf soft vinyl doll. The proceeds of its purchase going to the preservation of the Smurfs habitat worldwide. I'm sorry, are Smurfs like pandas in this universe? Like there's some kind of endangered species that can't be like, that aren't sold as pets, and they just live in the wild as like baby. I don't understand. The baby Smurf before me wasn't in good shape, however. The noise I had heard had been its hoarse crying and sobbing. Looking up at me, the creature was visibly terrified. The diminutive blue being's body had been tightly wrapped in... Wait. Say that 5 times fast. The diminutive blue being's body, tightly wrapped in rough sisal twine from chin to toe. The wee little infant strained futilely against its bonds, rocking back and forth between sobs. I picked the creature up, noting by the color of its trademark little hat that I was probably looking at the very rare, except for baby Smurf... Wait. I was probably looking at the very rare, except for baby Smurf's female of the species. Wait, does that mean female Smurfs are rare except for babies? So, do the female baby Smurfs, do a bunch of them, like, become men later on? Is it like that fish that changes sex during, like, mating season so that there will be more female fish or whatever? Is that how Smurfs work in this universe? Noted real animal Smurfs? The bewildered thing's face was a mask of terror as I scrutinized it with fascination. The other agents had by now gathered around, and there was nowhere the panicking baby Smurf could turn without seeing a human face. I started to unwrap the twine, and when I'd finished, the poor little creature was naked except for its little hat. I had guessed right about the baby Smurfs. Star. The tight, rough sisal twine had gouged into the Smurf's tender blue skin, leaving its impression deep in the flesh. The creature also exhibited signs of abuse. Minuscule bruises everywhere, including on the unusual round little tail. I gave the tail a curious, gentle squeeze. What is with these people? And they're like, all of these people just want to touch the Smurfs' tails. Like, leave the Smurfs alone. Leave their tails alone. You don't need to be poking their tails. You don't need to be squeezing their tails. You don't need to be doing anything to their tails. You don't need to be doing anything to these little blue Smurf things. I gave the tail a curious, gentle squeeze as the little blue biped squirmed in my grasp, eliciting a frantic yelp of pain. Its pitiable appendage was still sore from being pinched by whomever the Smurf's former tormentors had been. Its tail also exhibited the telltale puncture mark of a syringe? I'm sorry, what? These people, like, injected the baby Smurf with something? The smugglers didn't seem to have considered this baby Smurf of any value when they had fled, which explained the rough treatment and the general disregard for its welfare. It would take a couple of days to process the creature. After that, my department would alert the Blue Moon Nursery. This little blue creature may not realize it yet, but things were going to change for the better. Its village was likely gone by now, so life among philanthropic humans would be in its best interest. The way this person writes these stories, like, he uses just the right amount of really annoying words that are a pain in the ass to say out loud. There are some wild implications in this. Like, apparently Smurfs are an endangered species. Even though they are intelligent enough to speak and communicate with humans, they're basically treated like animals. Like how you would treat, like, an ocelot or something that was stolen from its home for the exotic animal trade. And then when they get rescued, they get sent to, like, a sanctuary or something. This is a baby. This is, like, it has the intelligence of a human baby, and when it grows up, it will have the intelligence of an adult Smurf. So why would they not have a system for, like, Smurf adoption? Why would they give this Smurf to humans at all? Why wouldn't Smurfs be considered a part of society? They basically are the same as humans and are known by humans, apparently. Like, they're not a secret anymore. Aren't Smurfs supposed to be a secret? Well, anyway, I guess in the context of this universe, The Smurfs are not a secret, but they're not a part of society, and they don't have any like adoption system or fostering system or like childcare system, and instead abandoned baby Smurfs go off to some rescue agency or something, like some kind of animal. This is so weird. This is such like a weird way of writing your universe. And this guy that the story is apparently about, the main character of Smurf in Hand, he just found this baby Smurf just like in a box, and he just decided that the Smurf was his. Like, doesn't that Smurf have parents? Doesn't that Smurf have like a family or something? So he just stole this baby. He just stole a baby, and now he has this baby that doesn't belong to him, and it just lives with him. This baby that's not related to him and isn't even the same species as him. He just stole it. What the hell? Later that day, my attention was drawn back to the improvised playpen when I heard one of the baby Smurfs begin to cry. As I went over to investigate, I smelled rather than saw what was the matter. Uh-oh, Dewdrop needed a diaper change and probably a bath as well. Ew. Oh, ew, I didn't even think of that. Like, how much is this baby shitting that it needs a diaper change and a bath? I plucked Dewdrop out of the playpen and, peeling off her lavender pajamas, discovered the offending diaper. I unfastened the... Oh no, are you really gonna go into how you change a baby's diaper? Ugh. I unfastened the safety pin as she twisted in my grasp. Well, only when I'd removed the soiled bit of cloth from her did she cease her sniveling. Blueberry stared questioning up at me, wondering why I'd taken away his playmate. I'll bring her back in one piece, Blueberry, I assured her with a grin. He's lying. He's lying. Don't believe him, Blueberry. Don't believe him. He's gonna do horrible things to this Smurf. I carried Dewdrop with me into the bathroom. The frisky little creature's tail was all a-quiver with excitement as I held her tiny figure under a stream of warm water from the bathroom sink. Dewdrop emitted tiny squeaks of enjoyment as the hypoallergenic vegan soap covered her delicate blue skin with fragrant suds. I like how he had to specify what kind of soap he's using. It's hypoallergenic and vegan. She giggled as she waved her arms, trying to pop some of the bubbles floating in the air about her with tiny blue fingers. When it came time to wash little Dewdrop's face, the poor thing started bawling and squirming hysterically when I inadvertently got soap in her eyes. There simply wasn't anything such as a no tears formula when it came to baby Smurfs. Why? Do Smurfs not shampoo their children's hair? Do they not bathe their children? Do Smurfs not have, like, products that are specifically for Smurfs? Does capitalism not exist in Smurf world? She tried frantically to rub her stinging peepers with tiny bald fists, so I pinned her hands behind her back and held her face upside down under the faucet to rinse the soap off. This is horrifying. This dude is restraining this poor baby, like literally a baby, and holding its head underwater. I guess it's supposed to be like going off of the back of her head. So it's not like she's getting like waterboarded or anything, but still, that would be terrifying if you were a baby, especially if you were a baby who had been tortured by humans and you have this giant human who is like holding you under the water and restraining you so you can't even move your hands. It seemed that all baby Smurfs were very insecure without their hats on at all times, and this made bathing them all the more challenging. See, this is just more evidence why random humans shouldn't be raising kidnapped babies. Eventually, the little creature's sobbing subsided as I finished rinsing all the suds off of its blue skin. After I used a washcloth to dry the baby Smurf, I comforted her with a gentle squeeze of the little Smurf's soft tail. Stop squeezing the tail! Stop squeezing the tail! Between my thumb and forefinger. You see, Dewdrop, you're okay, and all nice and squeaky clean, and only a little more traumatized than you were before. Baby Dewdrop. Baby Dewdrop Smurf gets her bath. Ha 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 ha. It's, you see, you guys, it's like a funny, it's like a cute, funny thing that like a parent would post after giving their baby their first bath, except he did it extremely wrong and in a really horrifying way. That's some excellent Photoshop there. Upon touching the diaper to feel for wetness, I took the liberty of giving his tail a customary squeeze as well. But one simply wasn't enough this time. Of course it wasn't enough, because you're a fucking pervert. I exclaimed, "Pardon me, Blueberry, but the way you look sitting there right now and prattling in your little Smurf baby talk is just too irresistible. I can't. Blueberry stared over his shoulder at me in bewilderment as I commenced to repeatedly mash down on his plump little blue tail and diapered rump, pinning it to the floor and driving tiny squeaks from the little creature as if he were some pet's rubber squeeze toy. The little creature's blue tail flattened like a pancake under the pressure of my index finger, but as soon as I released it, the resilient appendage and equally soft and pliable rear end would spring right back into their original shape. This guy is way too into the tails. I don't like it. I'm really not a fan. You're 10 times better than a whole package of Charmin bathroom tissue, I proclaimed in conclusion. At that moment, I half expected Mr. Whipple, who the hell is Mr. Whipple, to walk into the room and say, "Don't squeeze the baby Smurf," in admonishment. Blueberry blinked up at me with a rather puzzled look on his face, making me laugh. He shouldn't be looking at you with a puzzled look. He should be looking at you with a horrified look, because this is horrifying. You are a horrifying human being. And you need to stop. You need to be stopped. I could see his little blue round tail poking through the seat of his PJs. Why is that a detail that you need to specify? Why is that something that you need to point out? Why do you need to point out the tail every single damn time? At last I'll explain the ecology of the Smurfs in my alternate world. Thank God. Now I can finally find out the amazing world building that I'm sure took you thousands of hours. Tattlerette meets Dewdrop and Blueberry Part 1. My lady friend from the Blue Moon Nursery and I found out about a conference hosted in part by Smurfs Matters, Understanding, and Relations Foundation. Okay. The organization was a new NGO set up to address the issues involving Smurf-human interactions, limited as they were. Limited? They have like a whole shelter system in place. Oh, whatever. We took my car. That's a very important detail, I guess, that you took your car. Blueberry and Dewdrop sat in the back snugly in a special car seat that my friend devised. She truly had a knack for making small items. It was a 3-hour drive further up the coast from the nursery to the conference center. Security was tight, and I had to register and pass through a metal detector. Why? Why do you need such tight security for a Smurf conference? Also, I wasn't allowed to bring any container large enough to keep a Smurf hidden in. Apparently, the single greatest human threat towards Smurfs was trafficking. Yeah, no shit. So you couldn't smuggle in the Smurf that you trafficked to the conference about Smurf trafficking. We were allowed to bring our respective baby Smurfs in with us. Oh, okay, so I guess they don't count as being trafficked or something. Amongst a crowd of philanthropists, zoologists, and politicians, my companion and I received much attention, for we were the only ones in possession of a baby Smurf, because you trafficked it. When the speaker was introduced, I at first couldn't see anything, but then something small climbed onto the podium, and suddenly an image materialized onto the auditorium's large projector screen. Magnified on it 100-fold was this speaker, a tiny blue-skinned woman wearing a pink dress, shoes, and signature Smurf cap. The speaker was a Smurfette. So that's what an adult Smurf looked like. The petite creature introduced herself. Smurfy afternoon, my name is Tattlerette. I imagine most of you are here because you want to better understand Smurfs and the consequences of recent Smurf-human relations, which only began to have significant impact less than a decade ago. The azure-complexioned Thumbelina, that sure is a way to describe a Smurf, azure-complexioned Thumbelina, then commenced her speech with a remarkable articulation. "Oh, you're so articulate. You're so articulate for a Smurf." I hate this. She began with the sporadic interactions between man and Smurf during centuries past. The significant incidents didn't occur until satellite images began finding Smurf villages all over the globe. She mentioned the incidents of a dozen villages being discovered by poachers or smugglers, and how Smurfs have become the new hot item in the exotic pet market, especially baby Smurfs. She also mentioned international resolutions to define the basic rights of Smurfs in order to help protect them from abuse. Yeah, I would think if suddenly a race of small creatures that are exactly as intelligent as humans, we should probably give them basic human rights and not treat them like animals. But what do I know? And also, this is a fake story that somebody made up, so I don't know why I'm getting mad about this. Nothing had been made official, but a handful of biolabs had made an agreement not to use Smurfs for science experiments. I'm sorry. Only a handful of biolabs had decided not to use Smurfs for science experiments. When Tattlerette at last reached the topic of baby Smurfs, I was especially attentive. It's unknown where baby Smurfs actually come from, or even how they come into being, except that it's by some type of enchantment. What is known is that they are always delivered to a Smurf village by a stork. There are two things that seem to cause such an event. The first is the astronomical phenomenon known as a blue moon. It is said that on a night of a blue moon, a baby Smurf, or even twin baby Smurfs, come to a village where love is most needed. It sounded very beautiful. The other way, she continued, is loosely referred to as signaling the stork, which is performed by a married Smurf and Smurfette in private. I'm sure all of you know what I mean. The tiny blue lady winked, and there was a short interlude of stifled laughter in the audience. So Smurfs have sex. Smurfs have sex in this universe. Oh, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. A moment of silence passed, and then Tattlerette announced, "It has come to my attention that there are two baby Smurfs here in the audience. Would their guardians mind coming on stage so I could see them?" Blueberry and Dewdrop excitedly crawled out of the basket at Tattlerette's feet. The adult Smurf picked up Blueberry, and holding him in the crook of her arm, she squeezed and scratched the tiny blue infant's plump Smurf tail. Blueberry closed his little eyes and emitted a joyful noise I'd never heard from him before. It sounded like half purring, half gurgling. Why with the tails? Why with the tails, though? Dewdrop looked enviously up at Blueberry and lifted her bottom up toward Tattlerette as high as it would go, wiggling her stubby blue tail for attention. So this baby is like presenting like a cat in heat. What the hell? What the hell is this story? This isn't even the weird part. This isn't even the weird part that I know about. It's just a different weird part that I didn't know about. And now I'm learning about it, and it's gross. However, if you reach a point where you don't believe you can adequately care for your adopted baby Smurfs, I know of a protected village in Belgium that could take them in. Yeah, they should go there. They should go to the village in Belgium. Please take these children away from these creepy adult humans who keep like pulling on their tails and drowning them. And then you have this very creepy drawing of this adult Smurf pulling on the baby Smurf's tail. And then another baby Smurf putting its ass all up in the air, just waving it like they just don't care. Pet adoptions. Meet Strawberry. This frisky and spunky little baby Smurf needs a loving home. She's very playful and curious, but most of all, she loves to cuddle and have her tiny blue Smurf tail played with. Will you take her home today? This ad, spelled wrong, sponsored by Huggies Diapers, now available in baby Smurf size. Diapers include a special hole for Smurf's tail. I couldn't have staged a more precious scene. The Blue Moon Administrator permitted me to snap this one picture of them together. You may see it below. Thank you. That's such an honor to be able to see this very bad drawing. Pom Pom was the first baby Smurf with a disfigurement that the Blue Moon Nursery had ever acquired. The shy male infant had been abandoned on a country road and found by the son of a farmer. The road next to the lad's father's farm was a favorite place for humans to dump their unwanted pets. One evening, while the young man was out performing pest control, he chanced upon the angry sound of some small animal fighting, and the agonized shriek of another creature obviously in pain and distress. From across the road, he saw what appeared to be one rat attacking another rodent. Though both animals were the same size, the screaming rodent wasn't putting up any sort of fight at all. It was simply cowering as the aggressor chewed on the hapless creature's hindquarters. The lad raised his air rifle for a shot, seeing this as an opportunity to take out two pests at once. The lead pullet struck the earth just behind the attacking rodent and sprayed it with dirt. Startled, the rat scurried into the field and out of sight. As the marksman readied a shot for the pest left behind, however, he caught a better glimpse of it in the moonlight and hesitated. Curious, he approached the creature and was shocked. The tiny thing had no fur and its skin was blue. Its hands and feet were similar to those of a human, only they had 4 digits instead of 5. The creature made no effort to elude him either. It merely hid its face in its hands as it lay on its stomach, shaking and sobbing. Against his better judgment, he picked it up to examine it more closely. The terrified little being stopped sobbing and removed its humanoid's hands from a tiny, tear-streaked face looking up at him, wide-eyed in terror. Watching the news about a raid in the area on exotic animal smugglers, he remembered the discovery of a baby Smurf and what it looked like. So that was what this thing must also be, he thought, turning the petrified creature to look at it from all sides. Upon studying it, he established 2 things: that it was a male of the species, it was completely naked, even its Smurf hat was missing, and that its fleshy blue tail had been completely chewed off by the rat. Carrying it back home and telling his father, they arranged to send it to a veterinarian soon after Pom Pom was taken in by our nursery. So that was a story. My lady friend who worked as a caretaker at the nursery, as well as making outfits for the Lilliputian blue baby, sewed a tiny blue pom-pom onto the drop seat of the injured Smurf's pajamas to simulate the tail that it had lost that traumatizing night. After all the time I've worked here, I've come to realize just how partial baby Smurfs are to their tails and to other Smurfs' tails, she said. It will never be the same for the poor little dear without his actual tail, but this substitute is better than nothing. Without anything back there at all, a Smurf simply doesn't feel like a Smurf. While every Smurfling seemed to realize that Pom Pom lacked a tail, actually seeing his naked posterior was still always a spectacle. Feeling the gazes of his peers, the morose little blue creature first sniffled and then burst into tears of misery as he clutched one of his bathtub toys, a tiny waterproof Smurf doll. Even he was ruefully staring at the misshapen stump that used to be his plump little tail. When I finally turned to look, baby Pom Pom Smurf was sitting in a puddle of his own tears. A puddle of his own piss. Oh no! Even in the world of miracles, it appeared amputees received short shrift. That sure is a sentence. Even in the world of miracles, it appeared amputees received short shrift. Finally came the good news. Yes, I believe we can restore his tail through a technique known as tissue expansion. We can insert a small silicone balloon expander back there under the skin and gradually fill it with salt water over a period of time. The Smurf skin should gradually stretch and grow, making the balloon roughly the same shape as the creature's tail. It can then be left in to keep the tail's shape. What? Huh? I discovered then baby Smurfs have an alarmingly low pain threshold. No doubt these tender little blue beings were never ever meant to be hurt in the first place. I mean, yeah. All creatures were never meant to be hurt in the first place. That's why the concept of pain exists. Pain is what signals to our brains, hey, this thing that you're doing is stupid and is hurting you. You should stop doing that thing. That's why pain exists. Alright, it's about to get weird, y'all. I know it's been kind of weird, kind of like low-key weird for a while. It's about to get real weird. So strap yourselves in. The ordeal. I arrived at the municipal shelter and signed in to enter the area where the animals were being housed. Another Smurf supporter had tipped me off that there was a Smurf baby being held there, and that its treatment by the staff was callous at best. The Blue Moon Nursery had room for one more baby Smurf, and I had been authorized to rescue the little one if possible. Any place with lots of larger animals, especially of cats, made baby Smurfs very nervous. So my lady friend was caring for Blueberry back at the nursery during this excursion. I passed cage after cage of dogs, cats, and rabbits until my guide brought me to a dingy little corner where there sat a small wire cage just big enough for a single hamster. I was stunned by the sight before me. There in the confines of that little cage was an unusually small runt of a baby Smurf and an adult Smurf. Suddenly conscious of my staring, the grown Smurf's cheeks flushed in shame. The poor little creature had been divested of his traditional white pants and hat for sanitary reasons. I was about to protest the humiliating way that this sentient being was being treated, when a new horror commenced to take place as a brutish staff member appeared with a bucket of soapy water, 2 clothespins, and an extension hose. The Smurf's eyes grew wide in fright, and picking up the naked baby runt, clutched her tightly, and backed into the far corner of their cage. "You can't Smurf this to us again," the tiny blue adult's voice squeaked in protest as the terrified baby Smurf started bawling. The worker ignored its pleas and opened the cage door, reaching out to grab them. "No, not the baby, please!" The runty blue infant yelped in pain as she was gripped tightly by one of her soft round ears and wrenched from the arms of her protector. The tiny thing was then repeatedly dumped into and swished around the bucket of soapy water, screeching and spluttering each time her little head broke the water's surface. When the little Smurfling was lifted out for the last time, it was affixed to an overhead piece of twine by a clothespin, clamped onto her tender pea of a tail. The adult Smurf was grabbed next, squirming as he was subjected to the same routine, except that a piece of string was used to bind his wrists behind him, and that he was hung by his bulbous fleshy nose. I couldn't even begin to imagine how painful it must be for the Smurf's big tender nose to be so tightly clenched by that clothespin. The adult male Smurf's tears flowed freely as he sobbed in abject misery. The wee little baby Smurf's hysterical squeals tore at my heart. Her soft, sensitive Smurf tail was being grotesquely squashed by the clothespin's grip, while her delicate teensy eyes stung from contact with the soapy water. Imagine people doing this at like a pet store or something, and you have like a kitten, and people just clean the kittens by like dunking them in soapy water and then hanging them by their tails. This is not a thing. This is not a thing that would happen in real life. Nobody would look at this like creature like and be like, I know how to clean that thing. I'll just like swish it around in some water and let it choke on the water and hang it up by a fucking clothespin. Finally, the man pulled the trigger on the hose's spray head and, aiming it, drenched the miserable little blue creatures with ice cold water. He then took down each of the wet, shivering Smurfs and dropped them back into their cage. As the baby's crying died down to a pathetic whimper, I spoke up. "I need to take this baby Smurf to our nursery. She can't survive the treatment in here." Why did you wait until after witnessing this to speak up? Like, what? Why didn't you say something like the moment her head got dunked into the water? And wait, what about the adult Smurf? What about that guy? He's like a human. He's obviously got like the intelligence of a human. You could hear him going like, "No, don't hurt the baby," but you don't care what happens to him? Like, what's gonna happen to that guy? Is he just gonna be in this facility forever? Is he just gonna die here? I thought about the adult Smurf. There wasn't much I could do for him at the moment, but while my guide was distracted, I dropped a paperclip into the Smurf's cage. It had a simple looking lock on it, and perhaps the Smurf could open it. Anywhere had to be better than that place. So what? You just abandoned this adult? You just left this dude behind? Like, this dude is he's just like a dude, and you just left him behind? You didn't like call the police or something to be like, "Hey, this creature who has like human intelligence and is for all accounts a human is being held hostage in this animal shelter. Please go there and get him out of there so he can go home to his family because he's like a person." They're just like, they don't care. They don't care what happens to the adult Smurf. They only care about the cute little baby Smurf. So this person is just as bad as the people who are like buying up baby Smurfs because they're cute as babies and then abandoning them once they get too old. I appreciate all the feedback. The part with the clothespins was emotionally difficult for me to illustrate. Revealing what insensitive brutes some humans truly are makes the importance and urgency of the Blue Moon Nursery's mission very clear. You are the one. You are the one who made this up. You are the one who wrote the part with the clothespins. This isn't a thing. This isn't a thing that happens. You're the one who wrote the story. You're the one who wrote the clothespin part. Why? You did this. You did this. You did this, Smurf in hand. Whenever the lovable little runt became upset or frightened, myself or another nursery staff worker would speak to it in soothing tones and cradle the soft, warm creature in a cupped hand, taking its plump, pea-sized tail between thumb and forefinger. Please stop talking about the tails. Please stop talking about the tails. It would be given a series of little squeezes. We'd gentle roll the soft, supple extremity betwixt our fingers and caress it. There's way too much going into this. I don't like it. I don't like it. In response, the precious baby creature would lower its head, close its eyes, and emit a happy cooing and gurgling noise. The baby's tail is very tender and must never be pinched or treated roughly. Gently stroking a baby Smurf's sensitive little tail is often all that's needed to soothe the wee Smurfling. If it's ever scared or upset, frequent daily stroking is required. I don't want to know any more about this. I don't want to know any more about the Smurf's tails. Please stop talking about the Smurf's tails. After her diaper change, the wriggly little creature would be rolled onto her back, and after poking its soft little tummy, someone would always tickle the extra sensitive, parchment-thin, light blue skin of her underarms. No, stop. You need to stop. He made a picture, and he, colored her armpits so that they were, a little bit lighter than the rest of her. Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that level of detail. No, thank you. No, thank you. The light blue skin of the baby Smurf's underarms is exceptionally thin and sensitive and must be touched very gently. It's also very ticklish. The tiny Smurfling runt's blue flesh was by far the most tender. I don't know how many more ways I can say no. Somehow, the curious little creature had climbed into the dryer from the mound of clothes sitting before it. Without looking, I tossed in a sizable armload of the Smurf's recently washed little diapers. Okay, first of all, how many diapers? How many diapers do these creatures that are literally 6 inches tall go through every day that they have armloads of diapers that need to be washed? And second of all, I know where this is going, and I don't like where this is going. Each baby Smurf required an unbelievable amount of diaper changes per day. Oh, I love how as soon as I ask that, he goes into detail about why there are so many diapers. If it was to be kept clean, dry, and happy, neither was the noxious odor of a baby Smurf's soiled diaper for the faint of heart. Only a truly loving person could shoulder the burden and properly care for the fussy, vulnerable little creatures. Our constant toil to keep the baby Smurfs healthy and happy was only possible because of our love for the little creatures. So these things are so stinky and full of so much Smurf poop that this guy thinks he's such a martyr for taking care of them because they're just so disgusting. I shut the dryer door and, setting it to maximum heat, pressed the start button. The diapers would stay toasty warm when dry. The baby Smurfs so loved the feel of a fresh, toasty warm diaper on their smooth little bottoms after a changing. Why would they let them just roam around freely? Why wouldn't they have a safe area where they would be safe and not get crushed underfoot? I don't understand. So much of this world is constructed in a specific and a very specific way so that we know we know why the babies have ticklish underarms and shit like that, but we don't know basic things why do they just let the babies roam around? Why is there no foster care system for Smurf babies? I don't know. They didn't think that far, I guess. My blood froze with apprehension when I finally became conscious of a previously unheeded thumping sound emanating from the dryer in the adjacent washroom. Oh my god. Diapers did not go thump in the dryer. Oh Oh my god. Oh my god. Later on, we'd play back a recording from the baby monitor in that room during the accident's investigation. Just audible above the rumble of the clothes dryer's rotating drum, we heard the runt's frantic screams from within, before the air had eventually become too stifling hot to breathe, to breath, that is. Each panic tortured cry was abruptly cut short by a dull thump. The wind must have not been knocked from the screaming little creature's lungs each time she banged into the dryer's hard, scorching interior. I'm sorry. But what the fuck? Oh, in a near panic, I sifted through the hot but still damp little diapers and found the runt lying motionless with eyes closed in the pile. Her cute little pink Smurf hat had been knocked off her head. Fearing the worst, I yelled for help. I was holding the baby Smurf in my hand, and when I yelled, the infant stirred and a quiet whimper escaped her lips. There was a ragged gasp. She went limp. At that point, I didn't know whether the baby creature was alive or dead. A couple nurses and my lady friend burst into the washroom. The nurses told me to follow quickly, and we all marched across the playroom past the startled baby Smurfs confined to the playpen. I followed the three women into the examination room with the runt. As terribly worried as my lady friend was for the runty Smurf, she dutifully returned to the playroom, trying to calm the shaken Lilliputian babies with a great deal of tail kneading and petting. Laying the motionless runt face down on a special little sanitary cushion on the exam table, I caught a glimpse of its body as the nurses carefully snipped away the creature's romper as I explained what had happened. When they had snipped away the runt's clothing, I drew in my breath at the awful sight of its bruised and reddened skin. It looked like it had been scalded from head to toe and swatted around by a couple of ferocious alley cats. Along with most of the Smurfling's body, its tender, round ears, plump little bottom, and even its sensitive tail bore painful-looking contusions and redness. As the nurses slowly turned the tiny creature onto its back, I saw the runt's bulbous nose, soft cheek, tummy, and toes hadn't been spared. She also had a black eye. Perhaps worst of all was to see the delicate skin of her underarms, that we so love to tickle, had been most dreadfully singed and bruised. I was dismissed and joined my friend in soothing our wee charges. The other Smurfs, including Dewdrop, Pom Pom, Strawberry, and Blueberry, were quite alarmed. Blueberry in particular seemed to sense something was very wrong and proved inconsolable. My baby Smurf's incessant whining heightened my own anxiety. This guy's negligence got this baby horribly maimed and wounded. This literal child was thrown into a dryer and burned because of this guy's stupidity. Why have they not had him arrested? Why is he not in jail? Oh, I hate this. I hate this. Why did he go out of his way to draw this picture? Why did he draw this picture? Ugh, she looks like she took a bit of a bruising in the last pic. You think? You think, Vic George 2010? The runt's seared, chapped, and bruised skin made changing its diapers an agonizingly painful ordeal for it. A sopping wet and soiled diaper would cause the baby Smurf intolerable discomfort, and before long the wee one would be irritably squeaking for attention. The poor runt, however, learned swiftly to stifle her complaints. The runt's silent suffering merely delayed the inevitable dreaded diaper change. Sooner or later, the dirty diaper's unmistakably noxious odor would betray her condition to us, undermining the runt's feeble ploy. Why are you going into so much detail about this? Why? The sniveling little creature would look pleadingly up into our eyes, beseeching us please not to hurt her yet again. That sorry gaze of hers pained my heart greatly, and I'd often envision it whenever I closed my eyes. Why are they still letting this guy, help with the baby Smurfs? When his negligence caused this. His negligence caused a baby to be, severely burnt and maimed. And he's still here. He's just here. He's just going into so much detail over the suffering of this creature. Why? The Smurfling runt's poor little bottom had become frightfully sore and tender. Even very gentle wiping caused tears of pain. That's a hilarious drawing right there with the photoshopped in finger. It's horrible. It's horrible and I hate it. I would personally treat her to a Smurf finger puppet show every afternoon in an earnest attempt to cheer the wee Smurfling. Look at that picture. Imagine that you're a baby and you've just had the most traumatic experience of your life, and you're covered with bruises and burns, and you're probably going to have scars for the rest of your life. And then some giant creature shows up and has like a decapitated head of one of your parents, I guess, and is just waving it around in front of you and making silly noises. Like, well, that would be horrifying, wouldn't it? I would think it would be pretty horrifying. The reader will be afforded a rare peek into the fragile psyche of this baby Smurf. Can you not? Can you not? Like, that was always my favorite part of every book I read. When we read the horrible nightmares that the main character had about the trauma they had suffered. Especially when that main character was a literal baby. The runt slides down the smooth surface of the dryer's interior. It's kind of fun, and she wonders if this is some new playground equipment. Suddenly a heap of damp but clean Oh, they had to specify that the diapers were damp but clean. Falls upon the runt and pins her down. A loud metallic clang startles the baby Smurf as the dryer door closes. The alarmed runt tries to cry out, but the mountain of damp cloth muffles her cries. Suddenly, the slick floor starts moving beneath her, and she's lifted up in the darkness. She cries out, flailing her little arms, but finding no purchase as she falls, slapped about the face by tumbling wet diapers. Her cries are cut short as she hits the hard floor with a dull thump, her breath painfully knocked out of her. Over and over, the helpless, confused, and terrified Smurfling runt endures the frightening, painful cycle within the pitch-black confines of the running dryer. The metal walls and flying diapers start to warm, and before long are scalding hot, burning every bit of bare blue flesh that touches it. Soon the organic cotton of her very own rubber is charring the skin beneath. The air becomes as scorching as well, and with each tortured breath her lungs burn until she chokes, no longer able to scream. I hate that I had to read that. Thank you. Thank you, Smurf in Hand. Thank you, Smurf in Hand, you piece of shit, for making me read that. But these magical little beings were simply never meant to suffer horrors like this in the first place. Horrors that you caused. Like, I have to keep driving this home. This is his fault. This is the author's fault. This is his fault. Why is he acting like it's man is the real monster and I'm not the one responsible when it is clearly directly his fault? I prayed nothing like this would ever happen to my sweet little blueberry. Okay, theory time. This man deliberately put the baby into the dryer because he didn't like that another Smurfling, oh my god, I'm using their lingo. He didn't like that another baby Smurf was getting more attention than his precious little Blueberry. That's what it is. He was mad that Blueberry wasn't getting the attention that the runt was getting, so he threw her in the dryer. And this was all deliberate. He did it on purpose. That's my theory. You people are crazy. That story about the Smurfling has obvious and highly disturbing sexual overtones. I fear for your sanity, all of you. But in the meantime, here's a picture. Take more than a cotton bud on the end of a finger to put this right. Ah, yes. The one sensible person on this forum. Thank you. Blue Buddies Forum member WTF. WTF, you are discriminating the Smurfs, angry Smurf face. How dare you be mean to Smurf in Hand's story? You made us very sad, mad, and disappointed. Spelled wrong. Disappointed Smurf face. Okay, I'm gonna read this in like a simpering, ooh-woo voice. To Smurf in Hand. I'm sorry I didn't start reading your story before. Sad Smurf face. I just started to read. Just started to read like in general? Or just started to read this? Okay. I just started to read, and today I passed about 1 page or less out of the whole topic. The story is turning out awesome, and I've got more to read. So I'll read this at some point, approx 1 or 2 days, to figure out so I can look forward to the most recent parts. P.S. That troll posting that extremely disturbing picture was being very mean. I am sorry I didn't go through this before because I never started reading this back then. You did the right thing. Overall, I am proud of your artwork. You are talented. Happy Smurf face. And I kind of feel guilty for not reading this earlier. Well, you WTF, get out of here. We don't allow violence. Erg. Angry Smurf face. Keep up the good work, Smurf in hand. Happy Smurf face. I was spending yet another happy afternoon playing with and helping to care for the baby Smurfs at the Bluebird Nursery. Why are you still allowed back at this nursery? Why are they still letting you in this building when you have almost killed one of their charges? Tucking them snugly into their cradle, I fluffed their adorable little non-allergenic pillows. Why is he going into so much detail about, whether or not the pillows and the cloth are organic and non-allergenic and stuff? Why does this person do anything, honestly? Why anything? Why am I reading this? For the content, obviously. I live for the content. I am just a slut for content. We located all but 2 of the little baby Smurfs cowering in nooks about the nursery playroom. The poor incontinent runt had wet herself hours ago, and most of the other poor little blue infants were terribly overdue for a diaper change. We couldn't, however, locate Strawberry or Pom Pom, and after an hour of searching the nursery, we came to the chilling conclusion they'd been Smurf-napped. Smurf-napped. For some reason, the term Smurf-nap just kind of drained all of the energy from my body. Poor little Smurfling Run started crying day and night from tummy cramps, and after checking and rechecking her diaper throughout the day, and it was surmised that the creature's insides weren't moving. Oh, we are gonna have a little side story about a constipated baby Smurf. That's lovely. I love this story. This is such a great story. Truly a classic of American literature. Earlier this morning, our cyber specialist located these video clips hosted on a server somewhere outside the country. It had been already accessed several hundred times before he was able to hack the site and take it down, because that's how the internet works. The detective opened a file on the computer desktop, and the movie snippet filled the screen and began to play. I watched the video clip in horror. Nothing could have prepared me for what we were about to witness. There were Pom Pom and Strawberry. Pom Pom's darling little hat with its fluffy blue pom-pom sewed on it was unmistakable. The terrified little blue infants each were hog-tied and dangling in midair, crying their little hearts out. Oh, I hope that there's a drawing of this. I hope that this sick fuck made a drawing of this. Strawberry's adorable little pink PJs with the words Lil Miracle? I'm sorry, what? Lil Miracle? Ugh. With the words Lil Miracle printed on them, were torn off and lay on a rough-looking workbench below. Occasionally we'd hear a man's coarse laughter between our beloved Smurfling's tortured sobs. Seeing from the video how much the 2 baby Smurfs' diapers sagged told me they'd been unpleasantly sodden and soiled for a very long time, perhaps for a day or even longer. Poor little Pom Pom flushed miserably as his ersatz tail was ridiculed. The cruel man jabbed at it with his finger. "What's with your misshapen tail, you deformed little blue freak?" his masked captor sneered into a digitally disguised voice. Then the helpless Smurfling's soft, tender, bulbous little blue noses and tails, which they so loved to have caressed at the nursery, were each viciously pinched, jerked, and twisted repeatedly. A Smurf's nose was tender enough, but there was nothing so sensitive as a Smurf's bulbous tail. I blanched at those tied Smurflings' sharp, frenetic screeches of pain. They were like nothing I'd ever before heard, and I would rather have gone permanently deaf than to hear those poor, suffering, tiny blue infant creatures' shrill outbursts of unmitigated agony. I'm about to scroll down. And I'm gonna see a picture. I'm gonna see a picture that I'm not gonna like. That certainly is a picture. That certainly is a picture that I'm looking at. In the next scene, they howled as each was taken in turn by their floppy, round Smurf ears, which were given a series of merciless wrenches and twists. The baby Smurf's soft, round ears were roughly twisted and wrenched out of shape. The delicate things soon exhibited severe bruising and swelling. I was dumbfounded by these dark scenes of wanton cruelty. Why anyone would be amused by the cute little baby creature's suffering was beyond my comprehension. You wrote this story. You are the person who wrote this story. You decided to do this. You made this happen. Why are you acting like you had no part in this? You wrote this story. You wrote it. You were the one who wrote it. Strawberry was then untied and allowed to fall. The diapered Smurfling's posterior hit the workbench with an audible, wet, and squishy-sounding plop. The diaper was yanked off as the tiny blue infant was pinned face down on the workbench's nicked and greasy surface. The man's other hand came back into view, brandishing what appeared to be a short section of flexible plastic track for toy cars. As Pom Pom dangled above, he stopped crying and gaped in abject disbelief as Strawberry was slapped repeatedly on the rear with the length of track. The Lilliputian infant's face contorted and went purple as it yelped with each sharp resounding smack. The shocked, soggy, and sobbing Pom Pom was untied and dealt with next. The poor Smurfling thrashed and screamed wildly as it was spanked. When it was over, the two stunned and exhausted little creatures lay face down, sobbing breathlessly. Their tender, plump little blue bottoms were covered in reddish welts. So there was no reason for this to exist. There was no reason for any person to ever draw this picture. And yet, this person drew this picture. They decided to draw this picture. Neither of the tiny blue creatures had ever been remotely treated like this before, and they couldn't believe this was really happening to them. Strawberry especially had never experienced any real pain in all her sweet young life, nor had any human ever abused her, and the shock of this nightmarish cruelty, after being so mollycoddled at the Blue Moon Nursery, threatened to destroy her fragile psyche. From off-camera, their tormentors' raucous laughter eclipsed Strawberry's and Pom Pom's plaintive mewling. In a later part of the clip, Pom Pom had been grabbed and was being dunked headfirst into a pail of water. He was held halfway under as he writhed wildly. I could see his legs kicking frantically in the air, and his bruised and swollen Smurf tails panicked, quivering. The diminutive baby creature was powerless in its torturous grasp, and was mercilessly immersed for intolerably long periods of time. Upon the brink of drowning, the suffering little infant would be brought up only long enough to have any water squeezed from its aching little lungs, and to take a couple desperate gasps of air before being shoved back under water. Baby Smurfs were terrified to have their heads underwater. The fear of suffocation in deep water was the reason we only bathed them in basins of very shallow distilled water. Thank you for that fun fact on this picture of a child being waterboarded. I simply had to turn away from one other awful sight of the final clip, but not before I saw someone's hands unscrew a bottle of hot pepper sauce and deliberately rub it into helpless Strawberry's delicate, moist little eyes using a cotton swab. What? Who even comes up with something like that? I was the same type of swab we would use to gently clean the baby Smurf's big, soft, floppy ears during their bath time. Her piercing shrieks exploded from the computer speakers and froze my blood. Periodically, these terrible scenes were briefly illuminated by the brief flicker of what must have been a camera's flash. No. Strawberry's frantic writhing and shrieking was unbearable to witness as the poor, blinded little baby Smurf's eyes burned from the red pepper sauce. What sort of depraved beast would do something like this to an innocent, lovable little baby Smurf? I found the very idea of deriving amusement from intentionally hurting such a precious, magical being inconceivable. Once again, you were the person who wrote this story. You were the one who made the decisions that led to this. This reminder that some of us humans possess such a capacity for wanton cruelty made me positively ill with shame and revulsion. Oh, don't preach to me about wanton cruelty. You wrote this. You wrote this. I heard a sniffle beside me. Instinctively, I took out my handkerchief and without looking placed it into the nurse's hands. The lady had only to blot away a single tear before regaining her composure. We'll find them, I tried to reassure her. We'll get our babies home. I wished I believed it myself. I want to thank you for smurfing me that paperclip, he said in his tiny voice. I wish I could have done more for you, I replied ruefully. We know about your smurf-napped babies. We also have their possible locations smurfed within a very small radius. We'll try making a move tonight, but before I go, I could use your phone. Of course, I hurriedly grabbed the cordless phone. You could tell this story was written in 2008 because he has a cordless phone. Oh man, I'm like taking psychic damage every single time I read any of this. And I can just feel my HP just going down and down and down every time I see the word Smurf or see the word tails, or somebody talks about like a bulbous tail or a nose or whatever. I can't handle this much longer, but luckily we are almost at the end. I just want to comment on how this looks like a horrifying, creepy summoning circle for like the Smurf Satan, Smurfton. As I lay awake that night, awaiting news from the Smurf militants, my thoughts drifted back to those video clips I'd seen of Pom Pom and Strawberry imprisoned and abused by that pitiless ogre. Simply the idea of that disgusting fiend rudely disrobing our precious baby Smurfs and sullying their naked little bodies with his rough, filthy hands made me seethe. Did it make you seethe? Did it really make you seethe? Because I think it did something else to you. In the video clips, I had been able to see the revulsion and discomfort reflected in the eyes of the man's tiny blue captives. The Smurflings would visibly shrink away from the wicked human's violating leers and flinch at the touch of his coarse fingers on their delicate, bare cerulean flesh. Baby Smurfs by nature were innocent beings and not typically body-conscious around their peers or familiar, kindly stewards, be they Smurf or human. My own baby Blueberry, in fact, often romped and rolled about, squealing with unabashed delight, sky-clad save for his little Smurf cap, whilst I cradled him in my hands or lap. We at the nursery always treated our beloved little charges' bare bodies, especially their private places, with the utmost reverence. I hate it. I hate it. Bath time in particular was a magical time for caretaker and cherished Smurfling alike, with much squeaking and giggling as we caringly scrubbed the little one's soft skin with extra soft and sterile disposable little sponges. The reprobate Smurf napper promptly got down to business with the terrorized little beings. Firmly grasped in his captor's hand, Pom Pom cried in alarmed bewilderment as he was forced to watch Strawberry, his beloved nursery maid, let forth blood-curdling squeals as her sensitive bulbous Smurf tail was brutally crushed until it nearly burst. The vile human beast seemed to particularly enjoy hurting the wee Smurfling's most sensitive appendages, their tender noses and soft, squishy tails. I hope that you can tell how much I hate this. To so viciously abuse a baby Smurf's tail is perhaps the most painful and emotionally destructive act one could inflict, as the wee infant's tail is intertwined with its most basic feelings. It's meant as a special means to soothe and comfort when gently squeezed or stroked, and this affection is just as vital to the tiny blue babe's well-being as their specialized Smurfberry diet. The Smurf... Oh my god. Look at all this text! Why did he write this much? The Smurf activists had eventually pinpointed the IP address signatures left by the Smurf napper's transmissions to a cul-de-sac where a rundown abandoned house lay. They accurately surmised that this was like a likely place to hide the captives, and picking the front door lock, they entered stealthily. Searching the house, they found no trace of the man who'd taken the Smurflings, but when they broke down the double-bolted door to the basement, their luck changed. Hooray! When the Smurfs' rights guerrillas finally found our two missing Smurflings in that dark basement, they were greeted by a most horrific sight. The wee babies were stripped naked on a greasy, splinter-ridden workbench in the cold, damp air. Their cute little pajamas and hats were nowhere to be found. Pom Pom's ribcage was crushed between the jaws of a pipe wrench as he strained for breath, while Strawberry had curled herself into a little ball nearby, but facing away from her nursery mate. Both of the creatures' magical little hearts were glowing, but this phenomenon was much different than the joyous one I'd once witnessed when Blueberry miraculously healed Dewdrop. Rather than the healthy golden light, a sickly greenish aura had materialized around the precious baby Smurf's hearts. Lastly, a thin, jagged vertical fissure had split each heart down the middle. So they got like cartoon hearts that are splitting because they've been so horribly abused. Why? Had Pom Pom remained pinioned betwixt the brutal jaws of that pipe wrench for a few more hours, the poor baby Smurf's arms would become too tired to lift, and his tightly constricted tiny lungs would surely have given out. Pom Pom's toes were bruised from the weight of the hard metal wrench sitting on them. His little knees were swollen and ached at the slightest flexing, causing him to burst into tears each time the rescuers attempted to loosen them up. His spindly legs were painfully cramped, and several days passed before the brutalized wee blue babe would even crawl again. Perhaps worst of all was the state of his prosthetic tail. While mashed in the jagged metal teeth of the wrench, the little gelatin-filled sac which gave Pom Pom's tail its shape had ruptured and the gel leaked out. Ew, so it's like an episode of Botched, but with a tail. The poor Smurfling was left with a flattened and shriveled length of blue flesh that flopped limply about like a deflated balloon. That's just such a comical image for this horrifying story. The destruction yet again of this little creature's prized appendage had a devastating effect upon his psyche, and I knew that we would need to have the prosthesis beneath his skin surgically replaced as soon as his other injuries healed. Those last few hours before the rescue had played like a dark eternal nightmare for the two blue wisps where time slowed to a snail's pace. And now he's going into detail of what happened right before they were rescued? Like, what is the point of this? I know what the point of this is, but I hate it. Strawberry had gaped and whined in horror as she was forced to behold the harrowing spectacle of the cruel man clamping Pom Pom's soft little naked body in the toothed metal jaws of a pipe wrench. The fiend forcibly folded Pom Pom's little legs up so that his knees pressed into his chest and screwed the wrench closed until the baby Smurf's ribcage was nearly crushed. Each merciless turn of the wrench's screw forced a sharp, agonized squeak from the pinioned baby Smurf's lips. Pom Pom now had to lift his scrawny blue arms each time to draw a short, tortured breath. With an ugly chortle, the band remarked that he'd return later, positioned an activated web camera on a tripod aimed at Pom Pom and Strawberry, and then left the basement. So he's got some kind of like Red Room deep web setup of Smurf torture. What the hell? Strawberry tried frantically but hadn't the strength to loosen the pipe wrench, nor did the tiny creature know quite how anyway. Unable to help Pom Pom, the little Smurfling gave up in tears. There was no way for her to climb down from the workbench either, and a sheer drop to the cement floor below would have splintered most of her delicate Smurf bones. Thank you for going into detail about that. I really needed to know that if she'd come off of this workbench, she would have also died. Trapped on the workbench, with the horrid sounds of Pom Pom's agonized rasping breath, and the sight of his contorted, sweaty, tear-streaked little face was just too much for Strawberry. The distraught, terrified, naked baby Smurf eventually gave up. She curled herself into the trembling little Smurf ball position that distressed baby Smurfs instinctively assumed and began keening at a heart-wrenching pitch. At that moment, both of their tiny hearts were shattered, and though the simple creatures could not grasp the concept of death, they sensed they were nearing a dark place from which they would never return. It wasn't until 5 hours later that their liberators discovered them. Boy, I sure do love this horrible thing that is happening to these baby Smurfs. When the Smurfs' rights guerrillas finally located our two missing Smurflings, they were confronted by a most horrific sight. Only during the most dire sufferings and distress or the greatest of joys would a baby Smurf's tiny, precious, magical heart possibly glow, visually manifesting the elven blue infant's feelings. These little hearts had been broken. Oh no. Police were unable to find any fingerprints, any clues on the old laptop, or pin down where it was transmitting. The house had been abandoned for some time, and none of the neighbors had witnessed anything unusual. Oh, good. So the person who did this got away with it. That's great. It's great that you wrote that into your story. That you made this horrible thing happen, and also that there were no consequences for it. Look at his little pigtail. Look. Look. Look at it. Oh, it's so absurd. It's so absurd. This is so absurd. Look at this absurd Photoshop background and all the ugly textures. Oh, this image is amazing. Just unbelievable. A more liberal amount of the Smurfs' antimicrobial healing salve had also been applied to Pom Pom's and Strawberry's entire diaper areas, for their bestial captor had forced them to endure nearly 2 days wearing the same wet-filled diapers. Oh, this guy. Add that thing to the list. I don't know why I didn't realize this sooner, but the diaper thing is definitely also on the list of weird fetishes that this guy is into. Diaper rash was endemic with baby Smurfs whose caretakers did not heed the rule of keeping their charges' wee, plump little blue bottoms dry. You don't need to go into detail about diaper rash, my dude. Any longer than a few hours in an unchanged diaper ran the risk of the Smurfling's vulnerable skin contracting such a rash. This particular region of poor Strawberry and Pom Pom's flesh was now so raw and irritated that it would be nearly a week before it healed. Once the painful welts from the spanking subsided, both Strawberry and Pom Pom would be scooting on their rumps around the nursery playroom's hypoallergenic carpet more as a way to scratch their itchy rears than of going anywhere in particular, squeaking most irritably and occasionally pitching fits from the frustration of this relentless discomfort. That was a whole paragraph. That was a whole paragraph about how these baby Smurfs got diaper rash and how sad it made them. That was a whole fucking paragraph. Oh, it was a whole paragraph and a drawing. He also did a drawing. Some of the hardliners were of half a mind not to even return the Smurf Nat babies to us, unimpressed with our failure to safeguard them from harm. Yeah, I don't blame them. You put a baby in a dryer. Eventually, the nurse decided only to caress and squeeze Pom Pom's bulbous Smurf nose in lieu of his tail, because the self-conscious little tyke merely cried with grief every time he felt someone touch its pathetic, flaccid remains. I'm sorry. Pathetic, flaccid remains. Later, when the police conducted a more thorough search of the basement, someone found the tiny, months-old bones of a baby Smurf skeleton in the interior of a grimy old pizza box in one of the workbench's bottom drawers. The baby Smurf had been bashful, runty male named Snickers, which had been reported missing from a pet store 6 months ago. Beside its picked-over bones, there was an adoption ad clipping with a picture of it smiling and hiding under his security blankie. That same tattered little blanket was found threaded irreverently through the skull bone's eye sockets beside its moldy Smurf hat. I lay a blueberry down on his special little mattress. Wait, why are we cutting to this now? Rivulets of salty tears began streaming down my cheeks as I wept for Snickers, a precious baby Smurf whose joyful little squeaks would never again enchant this world. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck am I looking at? What the fuck? Pet adoptions. Meet Snickers. This timid little baby Smurf loves his security blankie and is waiting for a patient, loving owner with a quiet and stress-free home. He likes to keep out of sight, hiding under his little blanket, crawling into shoes, socks, or paper bags. Keep all plastic bags out of reach. A curious baby Smurf may crawl inside one and panic if it becomes entangled, eventually suffocating. Snickers is shy around strangers and should be furnished with nooks to hide in each room. He's also very bashful about being naked in front of unfamiliar people, so never undress him or change his diaper while they are present. Come to our pet shop today and see Snickers during his nap time. This adorable little creature will steal your heart. I couldn't even begin to imagine what a hellish nightmare baby Snickers' last day on Earth had been. How this innocent, magical little being must have cried and cried for just a little mercy as it was brutalized, getting only cruel laughter in response. This is some Saw shit. What the fuck? What am I looking at? Who drew this? I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. The stork stood vigilantly before us after he'd lowered the white bundle into my awaiting hands. I carefully unfolded the white organic cotton kerchief. Blueberry popped his head out of my pocket, and the Smurfling, the nurse, and I gaped speechlessly as the tiny blue treasure within was revealed. A newborn baby Smurf. Okay, so this guy who volunteers at the Smurf shelter and who threw a baby into a dryer. I'm not gonna let that go. He threw a baby into a dryer. Is somehow special and trustworthy enough that he gets a newborn baby Smurf. Okay, sure. While outsiders were almost never permitted to enter the baby's living area, we had started a small gift shop selling postcards, t-shirts, bumper stickers, buttons, and even DVDs, which, though quite expensive, sold surprisingly well. Why? Why would these people want DVDs of little babies? Like, imagine if that was a thing that regular nurseries did. If they just had DVDs of babies that they put up for sale. And people could just buy those DVDs. We'd eventually set up a program where individuals or businesses could sponsor their own baby Smurf. Each sponsor initially received a life-size plush doll bearing the approximate likeness of the particular baby Smurf they'd chosen, dressed in a genuine organic cotton baby Smurf diaper, previously actually once used by their chosen adoptee. That's beneath its adorable hat and pajamas. That's so fucking weird. Like, imagine if you do one of those charity things for, like, a kid in Africa or whatever, and they sent you a life-size doll of that child and also some clothes that they wore once. What the fuck? What the hell? Like, he keeps going on about how these baby Smurfs are the baby form of, like, an actual sentient creature. But then they treat them like an animal in a zoo, like some sort of cutesy little baby panda or something. For exceptionally large donations, in addition to hanging a plaque in honor of the generous soul in the nursery, they would receive a short DVD video each month highlighting their favorite baby Smurfs' antics and care. That's really creepy too. Subscribers were overwhelmingly fond of the magical bath time videos. Oh my god, really? An auction to become the first sponsor of the Tiny Miracle ensued. Presenting the winning bidder with her prize the next day, she actually blinked away a tear of sentiment when she first held that tiny scrap of organic cotton, as she reflected on the fact it had once tenderly enfolded the fragile Smurfling's nether region and faithfully absorbed his whittle messy. I'm sorry? Smurf lovers bid furiously at the Blue Moon Nursery's online auction for the privilege to be the new baby Smurfling's very first sponsor. Since the diaper that was actually used by the sponsor baby Smurf was included with the doll, it was announced that the tiny blue creature had recently filled a first diaper in just 1.5 hours of the baby creature's life here at the nursery. This miraculous event was broadcast live on the nursery site's webcam, the nurse holding up the obviously soiled diaper for all to see. Before a day had passed before even the newborn Smurfling's tiny baby eyes had opened on their own, that single precious diaper alone had sold for enough money to cover the entire Blue Moon Nursery's operational costs for 2 months. Of course it did. Of course it fucking did, because this is a town of weird diaper fetishists. The winning bidder blinked away a tear of sentiment as she held the tiny scrap of washed organic cotton that had gently enfolded the newborn Smurf's nether region and faithfully absorbed his very first whittle messy. The tiny blue infant's first deity was the Smurfophile Shroud of Turin. Smurfophile. There's so much to unpack here, and I just can't. No amount of therapy is ever going to make this better for me or for the people who wrote this. During the week of the advertisement campaign, the Blue Moon Nursery secretary had discovered an email containing disturbing images sent to our inbox. The first was a malicious, digitally manipulated image involving the newspaper picture of the newborn Smurf and a small animal guillotine, like the one I'd heard was sometimes used for euthanasia in the laboratory near where I lived. The one Blueberry was nearly delivered to so long ago. Seeing the image of such a sacred, innocent little being twisted in such a stomach-turning manner boiled my blood. Your little baby heart-tummy Smurf is next. It was obvious this harassing email's author was none other than the demented Smurf napper who'd so recently sullied the nursery's inner sanctum with his presence. Or it might just be like a teenager who's an asshole. You do realize that some people are just like little edgelords, right? Lastly, at the bottom was a shocking image of what I recognized as the baby Smurf Snickers, or more accurately, Snickers' corpse. The ravaged Smurfling's nude body was suspended upside down from a string. A few inches further up, the string was knotted around his well-chewed baby pacifier. The ill-fated baby Smurf had been teething when he was abducted. When the police discovered his skeletal remains, there had been a single teensy baby Smurf tooth amongst the bones, dislodged from the skull. Sticker's microscopic incisor had borne a telling pattern of scratches on the enamel, the kind of marks a pair of needle-nose pliers would make. What the fuck? Hello, kitties. Meet Snickers. Even during his final death throes, the bashful little blue rodent was trying to cover his shame. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. Ha 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 ha. Oh good, there's more toilet stuff in this story. The little runt's week-long force-fed course of bitter medicine had failed to yield sufficient results. Come Saturday, though, Nurse S's alternative but less than gentle plan to flush out the wee Smurfling runt's sluggish innards did finally work. The nurse's special treatment had been a singularly uncomfortable and humiliating experience for the wee blue babe. Upon the return of the tiny infant creature to its nursery playroom, I did my level best to mitigate the painful after effects of the procedure by partly pulling down its fresh diaper and gingerly kneading the sobbing wife's cramped lower abdomen for over 2 hours. The bewildered little thing was profoundly embarrassed from the memory of her recent ordeal in the infirmary. Her typically light, rosy cheeks were deep scarlet as she blushed, avoiding eye contact with myself and her nursery mates. You know, nothing really surprises me about this anymore. I've just kind of come to accept that this is the kind of thing that this person writes because they're a fucking pervert. And I can't do anything about the fact that they're a fucking pervert. Like, what could I do about this? I can't do anything. All I can do is read this horrible story that they posted on the internet, because that's all I can do. All I can do is read it and make sure all of the rest of you suffer as much as I have suffered reading this. So you're welcome. You are fucking welcome. Blueberry squeaked something in baby Smurf talk, and the 4 wee babes snuggled side by side, linking their soft, skinny arms and holding hands. The temp nurse and I watched in wonder as Blueberry closed his eyes and his blessed wee heart began to radiate with a golden light. The other 3 baby Smurfs began to calm, and soon each of their hearts appeared to mend as they too visibly glowed. They engaged in a chorus of soft squeaks and sighs as their tears finally dried upon their cherubic little blue cheeks. Within a few minutes, the miraculous Smurf hearts once again faded back into the sweet blue infant's chests as they descended into a deep slumber. At least for the remainder of the night, no bad dreams would plague the 4 little nursery mates. The healing had finally begun. The glistening tears finally dried on the little blue elephant infant's cheeks as their enchanted Smurf hearts began to beat as one. This is about the end of the story. They never get into whoever kidnapped the baby Smurfs. They never, find that guy and send him to jail or whatever. They never resolve that. It just never, and the Smurf in hand, never comes back, I'm pretty sure. I hate reading this. I hated every second of this. It just got real creepy, real fast, and I don't understand this person. I think that they have some kind of weird, diaper baby, maybe adult baby sort of thing. I think they might be into, I don't know, baby role play or something like that. And that's why they are so focused on, the diapers and the distress and all the tail stroking and the trying to calm the babies, all of that stuff. I think that is probably why they are so invested in this sort of weird torture comfort thing. But the internet is a wacky and wild place. There are some real weirdos. Most of them are harmless. This person, I'm pretty sure, is not harmless. This person has probably killed some small animals or this person has probably done some nasty shit that I don't really want to know about. And they probably have some bad things on their computer that I definitely don't want to know about. And I hope that they are in jail now. Because, like I said, the last couple of parts of this They were written in 2009. I hope that this person is gone now. I hope that they are gone. Like, most of the time when I read weird stuff on the internet, I'm like, haha, this is so weird and so silly, and I just find it so entertaining. I hope you're having a good life. A person who wrote like weird self-insert fanfiction for Inuyasha or whatever. But this person, I hope that they're gone. I hope that they are not on the internet anymore, and whether that means that they're dead or in jail, both of those sound like good options to me. I hope that that is the case for them. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this strange peek into the bizarre psyche of Smurf in Hand and his gross, very, very gross Smurf fanfiction. I hope that you all learned a little bit about the way that people are, the way that this person in particular is, and I hope that it gave you some insight on the human condition, because this was fucked up. And I spent like 3 hours reading all of this, and my throat hurts. I had to do it over like 3 separate days. And it's probably going to take me another couple of hours to edit. And I hope that it was worth it. I hope that someone got something out of this, because I most certainly did not. All I got was a sore throat and distress. Distress about life. This makes me want to be dead. So subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Hopefully they will be less tragic than this one. Goodbye!